All right, guys, the NFL draft is finally here in just a few short hours. The Carolina Panthers are going to be kicking it off by selecting a quarterback, Bryce Young for my money. But we still have the small matter on this channel of breaking down our last fantasy relevant position group. It's going to be the tight ends, ranking them 1 through 10, how I see them in my pre-draft rankings. So as always, like the video, comment down below if you agree or disagree with my rankings, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the other side of that intro. Welcome back into Twin Takes Fantasy Football, and with the biggest event of the NFL offseason upon us, we still have the last position group that we want to break down. Tight ends, maybe not so much finishing off this week leading up to the draft with a bang, not really the fantasy relevant commodity that the wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks are, but still a draft class that I want to break down 1 to 10, as this is one of the more prolific tight end draft classes we have seen in recent memory, as told to us by the talking heads and analysts of the NFL. So as always, we're going to do this completely landing spot agnostic. Every single one of these glorious tight ends is going to be slotting in to the newly Aaron Rodgers-less Green Bay Packers, helping Jordan Love ascend to starting quarterback levels. So with that being said, let's jump into it. I'm going to try to drive through this really quickly with Michael Mayer being the #1 overall tight end in my rankings. I know I disagree with PFF here. I know I disagree with a lot of people who like Dalton Kincaid, but Michael Mayer, for my money, is still the best tight end in this draft class. And I think this just is a classic example of prospect fatigue. We've been hearing about Michael Mayer as this generational tight end talent for the past 2 years coming out of Notre Dame. And I think people are just tired. They're just overthinking it, and they want to look for, something new, something hot takey, but just don't overthink it. Michael Mayer is a tremendous prospect coming into the NFL. He truly is a do-it-all tight end. He's an incredible pass catcher. He's an incredible blocker. And frankly, that's going to translate to him seeing the field quite a bit. I'm a guy that thinks that he's going to be out there 80% of snaps, because he will be out there to pass, on blocking plays, on run plays. And when the play breaks down, he's going to have that opportunity to help out the quarterback for dump-offs and whatnot. So I'm always of the mindset that the more on the field you are, the higher your snap share is, the more opportunity you will have. And a guy like Michael Mayer definitely will have, with his immense and varied skill set, will have a ton of opportunity on the field. Also, in contrast to a lot of tight ends, I think he's going to actually be pretty relevant really, really quickly. He's a very intelligent football player, has a very, very high football IQ. And again, that will be crucial in getting incorporated quickly with an offense and forming that connection with the quarterback. And I think he will have a day one impact just based on how talented he is. Again, he does high point the ball well. He goes up and makes contested catches. He has really soft hands. There's really not much bad you can say about this prospect. He really doesn't have a weakness to his game. And I think, it's just been a lot of overthinking. And Michael Mayer should definitely be the first tight end off the board. Moving on. Prospect number 2 is going to be Dalton Kincaid. And listen, I get the hype as a pass catcher. He is a tremendous pass catcher. And I've heard all the accolades that have been lauded over the entire draft process, but there's so many things that concern me about Dalton Kincaid. First, he's 25. When was the last time you heard about a 25-year-old tight end prospect coming into the league and having any sort of success? Anyone remember Hayden Hurst? Yeah, that's what I kind of feel like with this guy. And it also does really concern me with any prospect that they are ranked 2nd or 3rd at the end of the season, and then 2 months passed, and then like a couple months before the draft, they start rising up the draft board just out of nowhere. It's just really bizarre that why weren't they recognized or, respected in this manner while they're actually playing the college season, while you actually had ongoing tape and ongoing games to evaluate them on. I mean, this is what happened with Trayvon Walker last year when he rose up to be the #1 pick. And I still think that might have been the wrong decision by the Jaguars, as Aiden Hutchinson and some of the other players that were ranked higher than him before his meteoric rise turned out to be better prospects. I just don't really trust a guy that rises well after the season has ended. But do I think he's an absolute bust of a prospect? Absolutely not. I think he's incredibly talented. He is, again, the way he catches the ball, the way he plucks it out of the air is really a thing of beauty. But he's also not great at pass blocking. He's truly a guy that's, people say he's a wide receiver-esque tight end, and I don't want to say that Kyle Pitts' lack of success in the NFL is going to translate immediately to Dalton Kincaid. But when you have that tight end moniker too, you're going to be lined up in tight end sets. And if you can't block, and if you can't adequately perform as a traditional tight end would, I just don't think I'm going to see him on the field as much as maybe a Michael Mayer would be. I think his opportunity will be limited. And then when it comes to drafting in rookie drafts, I mean, even as a first round drafted tight end, taking him somewhere at the end of the first round, early second round of your rookie drafts, I think it's just a huge overpay for his ADP. Historically, it's taken 2 to 3 years for tight ends to come into their own. So maybe sit this one out with Kincaid, maybe pick him up next year when his value has sunken quite a bit. The one thing that sticks with me about Dalton Kincaid is that he gets all those Travis Kelce comps. Same thing with, a Kalijah Kancey being comped to Aaron Donald. Don't comp these players to these all-world talents, to these Hall of Famers. It really just does not work out when it comes to translating these guys to the NFL, because you see this insane upside and very, very, very rarely will that ever be met. I mean, if Dalton Kincaid becomes a Travis Kelce-esque player, I will happily eat my words, but I think the chances of that are very, very, very slim. Less than 10%. So for me, his upside, just being an athletic guy, mostly receiving guy, doesn't really work too much in the blocking game. I think you're looking at maybe a little bit better Mike Gesicki. So that's just where I want to level set expectations on Dalton Kincaid here. Moving on to tight end 3 in this class, it's going to be Luke Musgraves. Again, an athletic freak at the tight end position. Basically built in the lab with what you want. He's 6'6", 250, runs a high 4.5, athletically tests off the charts. And you have to love what you see on tape with him. I mean, he's a tremendous route runner. He knows how to separate, especially when going up. High points the ball very well. Is great when it comes to contested catches. And a guy that all around is a great tight end. Has average pass blocking ability. Not the pass blocker that some of the other guys in this class are. But again, that doesn't translate to fantasy points, so I'm not really that worried. I think he'll have to do just enough to be able to stay on the field to develop some opportunity. Really the first tolerable tight end I see at his current ADP. If you're taking him in the middle of the third round to the end of the third round, I actually quite like that. I think at that point you'll have exhausted, all the best options and, the starting caliber options of wide receiver and running backs and quarterbacks as well. So then you can go in and take a shot on a guy like Luke Musgraves, throw him on your taxi roster, and hopefully he turns into a pretty good prospect going forward. Number 4 is going to be Sam Laporta. And this is kind of the tier where I'm not drafting any more tight ends. I mean, Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer, I'm drafting them, just not in the first round or high in the second round. Like end of second round is where I'd be taking them, and Luke Musgraves, obviously like the back end of the third round. But Sam Laporta, this is kind of where I'm like, you know what? This is where I don't see immediate production. I don't see the value being where it is. A guy that's, again, going to take 2 to 3 years to develop, and you can buy him much cheaper way on down the line. But he is another guy that just does everything well coming out of Iowa, which is a tight end factory. I think he's going to actually kind of translate very well, or at least the career path he has, I see is very similar to Dallas Goedert, a guy that's brought in as a tight end 2 to support an existing pretty dominant tight end 1. And he makes his mark with, bringing in on those 2 tight end sets, and also just being a very, very firm blocker in the run game. And then after 2 years or so, and they move on from the older guy, if he's been athletic enough and has shown enough resolve, then he becomes and steps up into a pretty, a top 10 tight end. He will see the field more than the average tight end. Again, I like tight ends who are competent at blocking, because if they're out there and the play breaks down, but they're out there for blocking, he can just jump out to the flat and take a quick dump off, and you're really at the tight end position looking for any sort of points you possibly can. So I don't want to say he's average, but the way I'd like to translate this is he is a great catcher of passes, but not a great pass catcher. And what I mean by that is, the slants, the dig routes, the flats, running short routes, out routes. Like, he's there, he'll secure the ball, he'll bring it in, but he's not going to make, highlight level catches. He's not going to put up a highlight for you on the season. He'll just, he'll get his points very quietly. All right, number 5 here is going to be Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State. And frankly, I would love to just take Sam Laporta's analysis and just copy paste it to Tucker Kraft. I kind of see them as very, very similar products. Same kind of draft. I mean, super athletic, does everything really well. will come in as maybe a tight end 2, run quite a bit in the tight end 2 sets, and then develops behind an existing tight end where he could have the chance to really flourish 2 or 3 years down the line. Now, Kraft, compared to Laporta, and this is kind of just what your flavor of tight end is and who you want to take, Kraft is bigger. He is a little bit taller, and he is a little bit more aggressive. However, he comes from the FBS school of South Dakota State. And I'm not saying that any FBS player is going to be really bad. Obviously, I just referenced Dallas Goedert, who's now, in my opinion, a top 3 tight end in both redraft and dynasty formats. But he didn't really show the domination that you really want to see from an FBS player like Dallas Goedert did. I mean, that was also one of the biggest concerns coming in with Christian Watson, obviously a wide receiver last year, but coming in that lower tier, you want to see a guy that really dominates. And Tucker Kraft, I don't think, dominated to the point where he could really vault himself up into a position higher than Laporta or Musgrave for me. Moving on, number 6, and this is where we find Darnell Washington. And I can hear everyone writing that Darnell's way too low. And listen, as an NFL prospect, I love Darnell Washington. I think what he brings to the game is tremendous. He could even be a first-round player, and he will be an incredible help to an NFL team. But I can summarize my fantasy thoughts on Darnell Washington by giving my player comp, which is going to be Mo Alley Cox. Another guy who had just a ton of hype coming into the NFL, just a monster of a man, 6'7", massive hands. But really, his entire utilization is more of a 6th offensive lineman. He's, if you look at kind of the career path of a Mo Alley Cox, he's really on the field for like 56% of snaps, but he gets 1, maybe 2 targets a game. And if those targets are in the end zone, that's great. You get that, 6 points for a touchdown, but you're never getting that high target volume that you want to be a sustainable tight end. I mean, I foresee Darnell Washington having a very, very similar career path where, he's going to be used as a blocker. He's going to be very, very relevant to a team and their success, but mostly in the run game. And he could get some dump offs. He could find himself some end zone targets, but I just don't think it's going to be the utilization or volume that you really want from a high end draft capital tight end. He will be overdrafted in rookie drafts just because he's going to be at the worst a 2nd round tight end in the NFL. So I could see people taking a shot on him in the 2nd round, maybe even the 3rd round. That's not the capital I'm willing to justify on a tight end that's blocking like Darnell Washington here. I mean, again, you can just look at last year where Jelani Woods, a guy that kind of slips into the back end of 2nd rounds with the sleeper ADP, and he had that one big blow up game, but mostly was, very, very suggested to that Mo Alley Cox role. Another issue with Darnell Washington, the last thing I'll say here, is that people are saying he's a freak athlete. There's been no athlete like him at the tight end position. And he is athletic because he is tall, not in spite of being tall. I mean, his numbers, he just looks crazy athletic because of the weight he's carrying around and because of how high he is, how tall he is. But if you take away and make him more average size, those athletic numbers, they look fairly average. And I don't think that just because he's tall he needs to be even more athletic. I mean, you're looking at a guy like a Jordan Davis who got drafted in the round because not only was he this mammoth of a human being, but because he was way freakier of an athlete than even the average guys in his draft class. And that's why he was so highly valued. I think if you take away the height, Darnell Washington doesn't look as athletic, and he's going to actually, be kind of bottled up by some of the guys in the NFL who are used to dealing with taller, bigger, faster players. So that's where I come in on Darnell Washington. So like I said, those are the top 6 guys that I want to do in-depth analysis. I'm going to round this out with 7 through 10, just like I did in my quarterback video. Guys that, I'm not really even paying any mind to, not really even worth picking up in the end of your tight ends. Maybe you pick them up as UDFAs if they actually kind of make it into a good landing spot. But, just for the consistency of the number 10, we'll go through 7 more guys. So number 7, we're actually going to go with Zach Kuntz out of Old Dominion. Again, just an absolute athletic freak, very, very explosive, just tested off the charts at the combine. And he really can be used in a bunch of creative ways by the NFL. So I think he has a chance to see the field if he makes an impact on special teams. And then if he comes in like two tight end sets, he can kind of maybe earn his way into the field that way. Number 8, we're going to move up, tight end, Michigan tight end Luke Schoonmaker. a guy that I actually think might go a little bit higher than people are currently looking at him at. He has a great route tree. He really runs every level of the field, short, intermediate, and long. He has ability to get you involved in the passing game in all three phases of the game. He has a very, very high football IQ, which is not uncommon of a player coming out of a program such as Michigan. And again, as I said earlier, he is a tremendous blocker. So if he goes into a really great position, he does have a good chance of seeing on-field consistency, which again will translate to opportunity. At number 9, we're going to scroll quite a bit of ways down. Cameron Latu out of Alabama. Honestly, I'm throwing him on here because he gets the Alabama bump, and there's quite a bit of interest from him from tight end needy teams. He's met with both the Cowboys and the Bengals this offseason. So again, if he goes to a really good landing spot and the teams really like him and they really want to kind of fit them into their mold in heavy utilization offenses for the tight end, then cool. I'll take a shot on maybe taking him in the UDFA depending on how hype comes in and out as of during training camp. Follow the landing spot on this one, boys. And then last but not least, Brenton Strange out of Penn State. Again, a good all-around tight end, kind of similar to how I described Quentin Johnston. He's an athlete that plays tight end, not a tight end that's athletic, just a very, very athletic person at the position. But the reason why I'm putting him here at number 10, I could have put a lot of different tight ends. Will Mallory also was a guy that I wanted to highlight as well. But for me, Brenton Strange makes the cut because he has a vote of confidence from his tight end coach at Penn State, who has been pretty renowned with working with guys like Travis Kelce, and he's been pretty accurate, surprisingly, on predicting successful tight ends in the league. And he said that Brenton Strange could be a future, not only a starter, but a star in the NFL. So, I mean, if this guy has a great track record of predicting tight end success, I might lean on that and see kind of where Brenton Strange lands if he goes to a good landing spot and see what the hype is out of training camp. But again, not a guy I'm drafting. So that's going to wrap up our breakdown of the tight ends. It's been great going through all of these pre-draft rankings, just kind of breaking down the skills and abilities that all these prospects can bring to the field. Again, it'll be a very, very fun 3 days. Tons of draft content, not from me, obviously. I'll be watching the draft intently, and I'll be back after the draft, kind of recapping everything that went down, all the players you need to follow, redoing all these rankings based on draft capital and landing spots, and seeing where your valuable rookie picks should be utilized. So, yeah, going forward, definitely not everyday content like it's been this week, but we'll focus on Dynasty throughout May and June and then transition over into redraft come July and August. But it's been fun. Very happy to get back into this. Enjoy the draft, guys. Take care.